For this afternoon and tonight, a significant winter storm, including heavy snow with blowing and freezing snow.
Hello, and welcome to the SnowBrains podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a mountain guide, an Alaska heli ski guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of SnowBrains, and one of the last places that I've never skied is Greenland. I've seen it from planes coming back from Europe a few times, and it has completely captured my imagination. My guest today is Dan Abrams, the co-founder and CEO of Flylow Clothing. Dan started Flylow with a simple idea: make ski gear that could actually survive the kind of abuse real skiers were putting it through. What began as a garage project between ski buddies has become one of the most respected independent outerwear brands in the mountains, built by skiers for skiers. Dan's a lifelong skier, gear nerd, and entrepreneur who's helped define what modern freeride culture looks like, blending backcountry function with everyday style. Today we talk about how Flylow grew from duct tape prototypes to global recognition, and what it means to build an authentic brand in the outdoor industry, and how skiing still drives everything he does. Hello, Dan. Welcome to the show. Thank you very, very much for being here. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I think we've been emailing for years, Miles, but now this is the closest thing to us like meeting each other. Next, we'll be on snow.
Well, I think you, me, and Mike and Bevan need to go skiing. And like I said before the show, that you're friends with Bevan means that you are a pre-approved good person in my book, man. It's one of my favorite people in the world is Bevan. When did you ski last?
When did I ski last? Like 10 days ago? It was my 48th
because you were down
birthday.
south.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Continue.
So I don't do it every year, but if I can, I love getting down to South America to go skiing and kind of scratch the itch. I think it's good because it takes a little time off of mountain biking and all those summer sports and changes it up, but also it keeps me from getting out too early when it starts snowing here early season. And I think that, I always have a fear of snagging a tree early season in the backcountry or something and ruining my season. So you go down to South America, you ski for real, and then you can just chill as the first storms come in.
I like that. I always think about that video where Seth Morrison broke his ankle early season on a stump in Crested Buttes. God, that could happen to anybody. How many days do you think you skied last winter?
So, you have to put it into context, but I ski probably 120 plus over a season, and the seasons go, I'm 48. I never worked a real job, and I built my life around being able to ski hard for a couple hours a day. So like a full ski day, if you're on a ski trip, you're going out there and you're trying to ski for 8 hours, which like you really got to pace yourself if you're going to ski for 8 hours. You can ski hard for an hour, and then you and then you go for a walk in the woods, you try to find powder, and then you socially ski, and then maybe ski hard. But like the way I have life set up, I get the kids off to school, making breakfast, I do some work, and then my lunch hour, the people in New York City are going to work out for their lunch hour. My lunch hour is a little bit longer because it takes 15 minutes to get to the hill and this and that. I ski hard for a couple hours, or I go for a ski tour, for a short ski tour. This is midweek, and then you get to have longer days in the weekend. And then I come back, and I'm usually at my desk around 12 o'clock, eating lunch, emailing through the end of the day. And if I have to punch in again after the kids go to sleep at 8 o'clock, I do it. And it's, I love what I do. I love making clothes and selling stuff and killing people with kindness, all the things that I have to do. And I don't mind it. But I don't like to ski at night. I don't like to really bike at night. So I'm willing to shoot off some emails at night so that I can bike at 10 a.m.
I like that. Wow, that makes a ton of sense. It makes my heart sing to hear people with very successful businesses like you and like Mike Rogie, who I just had on the podcast with the Mountain Gazette, who haven't let go of the dream. You know, the whole idea is we do this so that we could go skiing, right? It wasn't the other way around. But I know a lot of folks who end up with successful companies, entrepreneurs or otherwise, and you just see, you know, they're in 20 days a year, 30 days a year, even though they live in the mountains. So that makes me really happy to hear that you're still skiing that much, and Mike is too.
You know, and I would say I'm like I'm a habitual person, so maybe I ski too much. But like,
It's because you have addiction issues like I do.
Yeah. But there was a couple years ago, a good friend of mine, Jeff Wogman, who runs our website and is kind of our marketing guru. You know, he came into Flylow and he did a stakeholder analysis, and he talked to a bunch of different people that bought stuff from Flylow, and he found that there was a common thread that all of them, or most of them at least, were in a position or had created a life for themselves where if it was a powder day, they could go ski. They could take that morning off. That they have enough money, not that they're trying to be like super wealthy, but that they have enough money and security that they can go to Verbier if they want to, or go to South America. It's this balanced life. And Jeff established this kind of what our mission is at Flylow, and he put it on this cool document, which since it's video, this is our brand universe. And at the center it says, Flylow is in business to inspire a life lived on your own terms. Work to live, not live to work.
I love that. Continue.
It wasn't my plan. That's just, you know, like, or I guess it was my plan, but I never put it into words. When I got Flylow going, and when Greg got it started with me, you know, our goal was to start a business and move back to a ski town. Thought was going to be Jackson, wound up being Tahoe, but we were going to move back with jobs instead of being ski bums. We wanted to be professionals living in a ski town, doing it our way, and Flylow's how we did it.
Well, let's take a step back because I really want to hear more about all of this. And so let's come back to that. But I really want to hear your quick and dirty life story, Dan. You can boil it down to 2 or 3 minutes, but if it goes longer, please do, man. Because I just love hearing people's backstory.
Got it. So backstory is I'm just a Jewish kid from Boston. I'm the youngest in my family, youngest of 3 boys. And my mom got the bug to ski when I was 2. So she put me on skis when I was 2 in the ski school, which is the same age as my wife. Although my kids, they started at 1.5. They got to be better. We eventually left Boston and by way of Washington, D.C., moved to Denver, Colorado. So I grew up in Denver. I'm a Colorado guy. I grew up ski racing for Ski Club Vail, and then eventually when got too busy getting to Vail and real life settled in, like I started skiing more in the Front Range. I discovered Berthoud Pass in high school and got lucky, was going backcountry skiing before I knew it was called backcountry skiing. I was born in 1977, so this is like the mid-90s. But we would ski as responsible as we could. Buddies that didn't have ski passes, so we'd boot pack out on Berthoud Pass, ski down, and do road laps. And we were always, don't get caught in a tree well, which there were other concerns, but we made it. And then I wound up going to University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington.
That is wild, man.
My ski coach said, I was like, where can I go to college where there's good skiing? And I'm also dyslexic, so small class sizes were huge for me to be successful. Okay. And so some great teachers helped me through middle school and high school, got me into UPS. And then at UPS, I started skiing Crystal Mountain. And essentially, that's
Crystal's
where
legit.
my Crystal's so good. But, you know, when you go there from Colorado, when I went skiing in Colorado, eventually, as a dirtbag teenager, I was skiing in, like, khakis with my ski pants over top, or I had this one-piece red Union suit from J. Crew that was all cotton. Now, you take that style of layering and you go to Crystal Mountain, Washington, and I lasted an hour the first day. It was so wet and stormy, and I left the ski hill, went to Backpackers Supply, which is no longer, but it was on South Tacoma Way, next to some of the best Chinese food in the world in South Tacoma, and that's where I started learning about technical base layers, layering. I had already been turned on to high quality outerwear, which was not provided by any ski brand or snow brand or snowboard brand at the time. It was only mountaineering stuff. So start buying mountaineering clothing. My group of friends and I, we started boot packing out to the King, which at Crystal Mountain, if anybody knows, there's kind of this hybrid inbounds, out of bounds, confusing as hell backcountry gate that's not backcountry situation, which is great for being a rookie going for a boot pack looking for powder because it was controlled. Eventually, I still have my issues with that style and that it confuses people, but we'll continue on. But then I started realizing, like, man, my gear just isn't suited for boot packing up this mountain and skiing down. And I started developing ideas for product concepts and so forth. So,
well, I think you skipped a big step there, but that's good because I have a lot of questions about that step. But I love that. You know, actually, just taking notes. So we got some overlap here, man. I grew up Jewish too. Shana
Tova, my friend.
Yeah, it just happened, man. Shana Tova. And I was born in 78. You were 77. You grew up you went to college in Tacoma. My grandparents lived in Tacoma growing up. And then I worked on Mount Rainier for a while. So I lived in Ashford, if you know where that is. And it rained every day in the summer. And being a California kid, I remember I'd be in Tacoma with my grandparents and we'd go to a barbecue or something and it'd be drizzling and overcast. And people would be like, man, it's such a nice day today. Like, what the hell? You people are sick. Anyway.
You know, in college, it didn't bother me because I think we were partying. I got into running. I would run the 5-mile drive in Point Defiance Park every day. Habitually. Whoa. I mean, I think that's why I still exercise every day and am so habitual about it. You'll eventually a knee surgery here and there, and like you're not supposed to run as much. And mountain biking's so soulful on the way down. But the way of coping with the human condition in my world, especially in college, where it's like you're breaking up with a girl or a girl breaks up with you, you get assigned a 15-page paper, you have to study for a test. It's like all these daggers to the heart that cause anxiety. Well, the solution is put on your running shoes and go for a run. And guess what? If it's raining in the Northwest, if it's 55 and drizzling, it's perfect. Get out there, enjoy it. And by the time you get done with the run, you have an outline for the paper. You know what you're going to say to the girl, or you know that life will go on, and life goes on. So
I think that's terrific advice. And I find that as well. You know, I'll have something stressful and I can do a workout even if it's 15 minutes and I feel better. At the end of the day, I think you and I can say that we're probably addicted to endorphins. Like it's kind of this amazing cure-all. And then I don't want to go way off topic here, but I'm learning more and more about how your muscles might even be endocrine organs. So some of the newest research is showing that your muscles can release good hormones into your body that make you happy and make you healthy. There's something there, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners understand that quite well. But I think that we have a lot in common, and that is one of them. That addiction to endorphins is really amazing. And also, if I'm ever anxious, I can do it, and then I can just sit around all day. My restlessness just evaporates. But I want you to take me back to the moment, and I am curious about this, that when you realized that you mentioned this already, but you realized that your ski pants weren't working right, they couldn't keep up. What were you doing? What made you think like, all right, this gear isn't good enough, I got to make my own thing?
I think that the beginning was going to Crystal Mountain and skiing, like on a stormy powder day, which I remember it was like the first day my group of friends, which there were like 15 of us, wound up at Crystal that day, and we all skied into an untracked field of powder, and only 2 of us came out. My buddy Ethan Ballenstein had just gotten done with ski racing at Holderness in New England.
Oh, wow.
But was from Jackson, so he could ski powder, and I made it out, we'll say. Everybody else ate shit. We're all getting soaking wet, and realized that this snow outerwear, at that time I had North Face mountain coat, green and black. It was awesome. 2-layer Gore-Tex hanging mesh lining. It was okay, but my pants, which were my ski race warm-up pants, the last relic of my race kit, I stopped racing when I was 16. So I had these Hard Corps, which I always have said at Hard Corps, but I don't know if it's hardcore. But anyway, they're not around anymore. But they were ski racing warm-up pants, and they got sopping wet. And so the first thing that I bought was, besides technical base layer, was a new pair of Patagonia 3-layer bibs. So I buy Patagonia 3-layer bibs, and they are Gore-Tex. They're from the mountaineering shop. In order to get them to fit over my Langs, I had to stretch them. So the cuff is taut, which means that every time that I'm skiing steep terrain and my ski edge might grace the scuff guard, I'm just slicing it up.
Oh, yeah.
So then we start messing around with telemark skiing on the side. Some of my buddies, well, in particular Greg and Ethan, those guys just became full-on telemark skiers. I was kind of a hybrid type of guy. And I started to realize that the knee box on these pants was insufficient. It was too small, and the backer and the 1-layer material wasn't quite enough for these guys. Because Telly, you're just basically doing squats, and you're getting small, and you're getting big, and you're moving around, so you needed more mobility. And what I realized is that we were wearing the pants out from the inside out. If you looked at the tree coat on the inside, it was totally rubbed off. And if anybody is out there wearing knee braces these days, I suggest that you wear your knee brace under your long underwear, because the Velcro, the male pieces, the hooks, will rip that tree coat out and eventually rip your membrane out. So anyway, that's when it was, freshman year that we were like, whoa, this is weird. So then I realized that we could warranty this stuff. So we started warrantying those Patagonia pants, and that Patagonia warranty was fantastic and still is, and is the benchmark that we set our warranty to. And what I realized was that my bibs came back the next year lighter, tighter, better for climbing, worse for skiing. And that happened twice, to the point that it was like, wow, these mountaineering companies, at that point, they didn't even market to skiers, let alone make ski stuff. Jackets are jackets. That's fine. But no one was making a good pair of ski pants. And that's when the epiphany happened. And I can't take sole credit. I mean, it was my group of friends from college and me, Seth, Ethan, Greg, and Braden. And we had ideas. And we were always kicking around ideas for businesses and various things, but I wound up taking that idea and actually running with it.
Which is a bold move, man. I can't imagine having that courage. What did the first prototypes look like? And who was testing them, and what broke first?
The challenge of getting something made abroad is real. Especially in the late 90s, early aughts. The internet was just coming around. And actually, the first samples, I would take other people's pants and like a nice pair of Burton pants, and I try to make them fit right, because they were always too baggy for skiers. And then I haggled my way through this site called Alibaba, which is still around.
Oh,
and it's like the Google of China. I was turned on to Alibaba.com in 2001 by a buddy whose mom was using it for international sourcing, and I hacked my way through it, and it took me years, but I finally found a factory that's actually a manufacturer that's still in business in Christchurch, New Zealand, called Cactus Climbing. And they were making a product called the Dreadnought HD. That was a 12-ounce Army Duck canvas pant with 1,200 denier knees and scuff guards. And I got it, and they spoke English. That helped. They had a somewhat of a product, and they were willing to do a collaboration with me, or they were willing to make me this product. They still don't distribute in the United States. And I took their product, and I added a powder gator. I added our logo. And I was like, I'll take 100 of them. These things are rad. They had reinforced knees. They were flawed, and they were cotton. The first thing that broke was the lack of waterproofing, I'd say. But those pants never broke. That was the thing about them. And some people still have them. They were so burly. So that fast forward, the next pant was called the Dropkick pant. That's a pant where I was able to find a factory that was making Orvis fly fishing waders and those Mountain Hardware soft shell jackets where they seam tape the outside. I don't know if you remember that back in the day. Yeah. So I found this factory in Taiwan, and I got them to make us pants. We did the reinforced knees, 2 layers of fabric, hanging inside lining, but the pants the knees were the right size, but the waist was huge. So I had to have the factory put belts on every pair of pants so that I could sell them. And what wound up happening was that the pants would low ride on everybody, which was cool.
Which back then was the shit.
It worked. We made our way through 1,000 units eventually after a couple of years. But because they were low riding, it would get tight in the crotch, and people blew out the crotches on every one of those pants, unless you were short, or if you were like maybe super skinny. But that was it. So we had serious crotch blowout issues on our real first manufactured production run that wasn't collaborated.
Wow, I love that. 1,000 units is bold, man. I love that. Yeah, the courage to say, I don't like this pants, this gear, I'm going to make my own stuff is
you say courage, I say ignorance is bliss. I mean, I didn't know that you could negotiate factories to get a surcharge to make less. And granted, when you're doing business, when you ask someone what their minimum order quantity is, they said 1,000. So I did 1,000 jackets and 1,000 pants.
Wow, that's a lot.
Eventually, well, that's the thing, is like really in the ski industry and in the apparel industry, 1,000 units that's just standard. If you can't make 1,000, a lot of factories won't deal with you. I spent the next 15 years hacking away, 10 years, and then Greg took over on production, and we had to find factories that would make us smaller minimums, and many clothing companies can't do what we can do. We can make 300 units of something, we can make 500 units, but most of our factories and the factories that are legit in Vietnam, the minimum order quantity is 800 units.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's a commitment, man. So money and time are super scarce when you're starting this. And it sounds like you basically did this in college or just thereafter. You kind of alluded to this, but what corners did you refuse to cut, even though you had no money and no time?
Well, I definitely had time because I was a bartender at night and a ski bum during the day.
And where were you at this point?
And everything. I was living... So after college, my group of friends, there were 14 of us, graduated college and left Tacoma and moved to Jackson, Wyoming. And I spent a year in Jackson, 9 months I lasted, and then I blew my knee out, looked at my roommates, and was like, I guess I need to go home because they weren't going to take care of me. And I was also getting the itch. I didn't like being a ski bum. I was just going into debt. I didn't discover the restaurant industry, which would have probably kept me there longer. And I made more money playing music. I'm a bass guitar player.
That is so cool. I love that.
I made more money playing guitar at night than I did teaching skiing. So I was already on the fence as to how long I was going to last as a ski bum in a ski town. And then I blew my knee out. Moved back to Denver, get the knee surgery. I was coaching water skiing at Soda Lakes Water Ski School, which is an obscure sport I became good at.
That's great.
And then I started working in a restaurant, and after 2 years became the bar manager and head bartender at this bar that was doing pretty good in South Denver. So I was making a lot of money, and I didn't spend my money on drugs like a lot of my other coworkers. The
restaurant industry is crazy.
Yeah. Instead, I spent my money on starting Flylow. So it was bartending and then credit cards, which is, a big part of my story that back then in 2002, 2003, 2004, you could essentially call up you could call up a mortgage banker and they'd give you a house, which I did, which is great. I bought my first house in 2004 and I showed $18,000 in income.
That's insane.
That is called a subprime mortgage. But it worked out because I never missed my rent and it was a good property near the University of Denver. So then I get to the point where I want to buy my first production run, and Chase Bank, I had a United Mileage Plus card, and they kept on giving me convenience checks, $60,000 convenience checks with a maximum 2.9% interest rate. That's with a 3% transaction fee that capped out at 3% or at $300 or $175.
Wow.
Which is different than today. I was able to start Flylow bouncing credit card debt from one credit card to the other using convenience checks, basically with $100,000 in lines of credit and making money from bartending. And I would pay those credit card fees or credit card payments in the summertime when I was cash crunched, and then turn around to do it all again the next year.
Wow.
So
that
it
is
was
gutsy, man.
Yeah. Well, at a certain point, I remember thinking to myself, really, am I going to go against Marmot and Patagonia in the North Face? I was like, I guess that's okay. And I went to bed. And then at another point, I found myself thinking, if this goes south, what's the worst that can happen? Am I going to jail? And I realized, like, no, I'm not going to jail. Being a bad business person doesn't actually send you to jail. Doing something illegal does. And then I thought that worst case scenario, I'd have to bartend for another 5 years to pay that debt. And I was willing to do that. So I went for it.
That's what it's all about in life, too, is balancing all those expectations and consequences and figuring out where is the line that I have to walk and can I walk it? And once you feel good about it and you have your confidence, you can pretty much walk any line. So that's really cool that that was for you the line and you were able to walk it. Well, settle this for us. Where did the name Flylow actually come from and when did it stick?
So like I said, I played music growing up. My older brothers were and are excellent guitar players, and they needed a bass player. So I've been in bands my whole life. My current band is called the Stoobs, and we play in a beer stube in my buddy's house. We're just dads. We don't really play out, but it's awesome. So in high school, we were always looking for band names, college band names, and fast forward to like senior year of college, we had been kicking around ideas for these ultimate ski pant. We're skiing with a buddy, Justin, and I don't remember his girlfriend's name, but she was French, and it's debated where this happened, but in my mind it happened in Jackson over spring break or Christmas break, and everybody's telemarking at the time except for me, and so I would just let them go down. They'd get tired, and in the middle of the run, most telemarkers get tired. Bevan doesn't get tired.
I was gonna say,
he's getting tired though.
He'll get it back
Anyway, so they would stop in the middle of the run, and I would just go when they stopped, and I just clean it to the bottom because I had my training heels locked down. And anyway, this French girl, we're bullshitting in the lift line, and she comes up and she's like, man, when you ski, you don't ski fast, you fly low. And I was like, man, that looks so good on a t-shirt. I just saw it, and I saw the two words kind of as one. And so that was that. I just had the name in the back. It wasn't a good name for a band. Although I think there is a Swedish band named Flylow, but it's not a good name. Sometimes Europeans take American or English and they come up with bad names like Jack
Japanese too.
So I saved it in the back of my head, and eventually I started making t-shirts that said Flylow and hats and stuff like that when I was trying to establish brand and trying to convince factories that Flylow was going to be the next North Face and that they should make me a sample. So yeah, but the name is debated. Ethan and Greg both think that she was talking to them, and they think we were at Crystal Mountain, which would make sense. It's been 30 years. Well, wow. Almost 30 years, so who knows?
When it gets that long ago, I don't know, and memory is so selective too, right? So I think that the stories have enough overlap where we're going to give it to you. So it sounds like your first commercial pieces were the cactus pant and the black coat, if I'm not mistaken, around 2005. And what made those pieces the proof of concept for Flylow?
There were some interesting things going on there, but essentially the number one thing that we were trying to tackle was that our ski pants could not last more than a season. That it did not make sense that you had to warranty your stuff after 1 year. At that time, Cloudveil had come out and was reintroducing soft shell fabric, real stretch woven soft shell, not the 3-layer waterproof version. They were getting tons of traction. They were blowing up. They were definitely the cool kids. They were younger than Patagonia anyway. And so the idea of making a non-waterproof but highly water-resistant garment was just not off the table. So the cactus pant being cotton canvas, that eventually we used Nikwax cotton proofing to add water resistance to it. Essentially, we were making a water-resistant Carhartt that had ski features, or we were making a soft shell pant where you sacrifice the comfort and stretch of soft shell to get durability and to not look like you're wearing an adult man diaper. Because we had different style than my older brother and good friend and mentor Steve Sullivan. who makes beautiful soft shell pants now that don't look like man diapers. But back then, I would argue that. Yeah, so that first pant, like when you got the cactus pant, you took it out of the bag, you'd puff up the legs, and it would literally stand on its own.
Whoa. This was hardy
they were
gear.
So burly. And actually, we went to our first trade show at Outdoor Retailer, and the guys from Canada Goose came over, walking the depths, the dark hallways of Outdoor Retailer, and they found us. And they said, these are really cool. You know what the number one problem is here? These are going to last 10 to 12 years. How are you going to sell more to those people if they last that long? And we started high-fiving. We were like, great, we accomplished it. We didn't make the nicest ski pant, but we did make the burliest one. And also we were like, really? You guys design stuff to break down after a year so people have to buy more? We were like, oh.
Planned obsolescence.
Yeah, there's a real flaw to the industry. And then the black coat was interesting. That's where we used this David Resource factory out of Taiwan. And that was a 3-layer soft shell. Mm-hmm. So it was a stretch hard shell, whatever you want to call it. It had a 10K waterproof breathable membrane in it, a nice shell fabric, and a light fleece lining to it. And the reason why we did that versus real soft shell is because this tariff game that's in the news now, like Greg and I have been playing for our whole careers. If you tried to import a waterproof garment, technically the duty should be 7%. If it passes rainwear test. If you try to import a non-waterproof garment, it's anywhere from 32 to 38%, and that's why Cloudveil soft shell was so expensive. When you think about the function of protectionist economics, and excuse me for going into my economics mode, that's what I
let's do it. I'd love to talk
and
economics and tariff.
I
overtalked you. Sorry, what'd you do in grad school?
Greg and I met studying international political economics in undergrad at UPS in Coma at University of Puget Sound, which is a subset of international relations where you mix and you look at economics holistically, looking at sociology, history, politics, mixed with economics. When I moved back to Denver and I'm soul searching, trying to figure out what to do, I wound up getting a degree in international development and international trade at the University of Denver. Most people went to work for the nonprofits or the UN or academia, and I was gung-ho on starting this clothing company, so I set everything up while taking interesting classes, studied international trade. So anyway, the idea of protectionist economics is to foster your own it's basically to sway the comparative advantage. And the comparative advantage is like economics 101. It's the economic theory that states the country or people that make the best product at the best price while doing the least harm shall make that product. That's efficient. That's capitalism. Mm-hmm. When you start to put an import duty on something and it costs more to import that product, that makes you think, oh, well, now I should look at domestic production because there's no import duty, so I should produce it here. So in my whole career, this idea of low-tech garments like a soft shell, not because soft shell is not technical, but because you're not seam taping it. You don't seam tape non-waterproof garments. You don't seam tape garments that are super stretchy, at least not back then. So they used to put in this excessive import duty to incentivize you to produce that low-tech garment in the United States. But even then, you can't produce it in the United States, and this is 20 years ago, and you definitely can't do it now. You couldn't get the same stitch quality that you can in other parts of the world where the machines literally shipped from the United States over to Japan, and then they went from Japan to China, and then the same machines went from China into Vietnam. So the cultural heritage, it's just a global thing that's moved around. So back then, we chose to do this waterproof garment coming out of Taiwan because we could afford it. Because at a 7% import duty, there was totally something different. So what do we do to combat the lack of breathability compared to the shoulder soft shell? We put huge pit zips on it. We noticed that when you're testing product with a mesh lining on the inside of a vent, that it actually reduces your breathability of that vent. Not to mention, you always get the zipper caught on the mesh.
Always.
And then
Always.
people are not zipper engineers like me, or dorks. And so you start pulling on that zipper up, and then you rip the zipper head off, and then you warranty it, although it's not a warranty. That is a repair because you messed up. So we remove that. We increase breathability. We remove warranties, again, to add. We didn't know we were trying to be sustainable with our durability and with not putting mesh vents in, but we were. We were trying to make these garments last longer. That's some of the stuff that we did from the beginning that set us apart. That, and then I think the other big thing, especially on that first jacket, was helmet compatible hoods. Which,
oh my gosh, that is huge, dude. When I used to work on Rainier, we would have the mountain hardware guys come up and we'd be like, guys, I still can't put my soft shell hood over my helmet. Like, what the hell are you doing? Anyway, don't get me started.
Yeah. It was and not only was a helmet compatible hood an idea, but then once people started, if you look at the garment industry, we use sample sizes. So a lot of people design on men's medium, women's small, or we like men's large because I'm a men's large. So I want it to fit me perfect. But we started making samples, and then we would establish a fit size for a jacket or a pant, and then you send it to your factory and you're like, hey, give us your best recommendation for a grading. So how much smaller do you make all aspects of the jacket to make it a medium and a small and an extra small and vice versa? We realized was that the factories were all trying to grade our hoods, but the reality is that my wife's head is actually the same size as my head. Granted, I'm bald, but
me too.
Relatively speaking, those helmets, they're the same shell. You change the insulation to make it smaller. So why would you have the hood on a jacket get smaller for a women's extra small compared to a men's large when her helmet is the same size? And I think that was one of the first things that we identified and targeted and did from the get-go. So
thank you for doing that, because again, that drives me nuts. Even today, if a hood doesn't fit over my helmet, I have a very strange reaction. But luckily, the companies I work with now, it seems like they go extra big, and that's the way that I want to see it. Because even back then, when I was working on Rainier, the climbing helmets are kind of small too, and these were just climbing helmets, and I couldn't get the hood on, and it just drives me nuts. And for me, at least, every layer has to have a hood. Base layer, mid layer, outer layer, everything. I'm a hood fanatic. Maybe because I'm bald like you too, though. But it's just so nice. You don't have to find a hat. You can just, boom, there's a hat built onto your jacket. It's so simple. I'm curious, who were the first shops or skier communities that adopted the brand Flylow, and why?
Well, e-com wasn't really a thing back then. Actually, Cloudveil built, I think, the first outdoor industry website. That was in like 99, and it was built by Jeff Wagaman, who now runs the Flylow Gear website.
Cool. I remember Cloudveil.
So I had moved back to Colorado. I'm bartending. I've been there now for 4 years. I finally get samples and product, and I met this guy, Eben Mond, who's now one of my best friends, and he's like a former telemark freeride competitor, and now he runs the Loveland freeride program in Loveland, Colorado.
That's cool.
And I was bartending for the landscaping company Christmas party he was working for. And I met him and his now wife. He said he was a pro telemark skier. I'm like, whatever that means. But we became friends, probably because we were talking smack that first night, and because I could keep up. Even on tele skis, I could keep up. And then I started alpining with him. Then he had to try to keep up with me, which was good. But he was sponsored by a shop called Mountain Miser. Mountain Miser was in South Denver. It's no longer. The shop owner was Dave Goodman and his wife, Claudia. And Dave, he saw the stuff, we talked, and he brought it into his store. And that was our first store.
Wow.
Was the store that I grew up going to.
Evan's
pretty handy. He built this amazing, maybe not a clunky point of purchase display using high alpine wood, and he welds stuff and he puts it all together beautifully. And then from there, it was the Bentgate Mountaineering in Golden and Wilderness Sports, which is no more, which was up in Frisco, Colorado. So we were a Colorado brand. The idea and the name came from Crystal Mountain. The product concept grew in Jackson. So Jackson's definitely one of our hometowns, but I'd say the Front Range of Colorado is our real hometown. And now we've actually been designing and making clothes in Tahoe for longer than anywhere else. So Flylow has 4 hometowns. And yeah, like I used to go to those ski hills with t-shirts in my jacket, and I would telly half the time, especially when I was marketing this brand, because telly was growing really fast at that time. And I had these t-shirts that said "Telly Girls Get Down." And anytime I saw a telly girl, I gave her a t-shirt.
That's rad.
And then we would do promotions with Tough Guy Productions.
I remember
and
them.
the Powder Horse.
Yeah.
And Tough Guy Productions did an on snow demo in the fall. There is none of that anymore, but Nat Ross would go out there and he would set up telemark demos, or backcountry demos is what it became. And that's how I met my wife. Eben was representing Flylow in Taos, New Mexico. He gave Megan, who came a telemark champ, gave her a t-shirt, and she was intrigued. And so she bought stuff. And her email address was Megan Michelson at Outside Online. And I was like, holy shit, Outside Magazine writer bought something? And so I reached out and gave her some stuff. She wrote a review. A few years later, we started dating. She only wrote 1 review. She wrote tons of reviews for other people, but it became a conflict of interest. But yeah, that's how I met my wife and how we marketed Flylow t-shirts.
Wow. Very cool. I love that backstory, man. And so, yeah, so going from those very first products, the cactus pant and the black coat, you've now obviously have a lot of products. But my understanding is that there's so much talk about the Baker bibs. And it's become a bit of a signature for your brand. I might be putting words in your mouth. But I have a really specific question here, but I'd rather just ask it open-ended. Tell us about the Baker bib. What's happening here?
Okay, so the first pant is the cactus pant, where you take a fabric and you overlay it with burly Oxford fabric. The next pant is the dropkick pant. It's waterproof. Same thing. We take the main panel fabric, we run it underneath, and we overlay it with an Oxford fabric. Well, then we learned about seam taping and 3-layer fabric. So then became the chemical pant. The chemical pant comes around, and it's our third iteration of a pant, seam taped. Now we're articulating the knees. We're doing articulated overlays. We're using that 1000 denier Oxford. We've reinvented the scuff guard so that it's one continuous piece of fabric that runs all the way around, so that you don't actually have another point of warranty issue on the front and the back of your scuff guard when your brake catches it. Now it's 2007, 2008. We have the best pro telemark skier at the time is riding in Flylow. Well, there were 2 guys, Jake Saxon and Paul Kimbrough. Kimbrough is now winning stuff and taking Nick DeVore. Nick DeVore is now filming and doing stuff. So it's this interesting world of the tele scene. Paul Kimbrough moves up to, he's kind of like Bevan. He like shoots you straight. He tells you how it is. He's not afraid of hurting your feelings. And so he really helped me make the chemical pant better. He moves to Bellingham and he's like, we need a bib. And I was like, okay. So that's why it's called the Baker bib, because Paul Kimbrough was living in Bellingham, skiing at Mount Baker. And so we designed, with Eben, who's always there beating up our gear, we designed a chemical pant into a bib, but then we made the scuff guard even burlier on the bottom. We added that patch-on pocket that some people use for a beacon. Some people put a cell phone in. You do what you want. I still wear a beacon harness. But that Baker bib, that's how it came about. And from there, it just kept growing. I don't know. People have said like, oh, Flylow brought the bib into ski apparel, but I can't take credit. We can't take credit for that. I think if you go and you Google ski pant, some ugly zip up the front bib comes up that's insulated, that's like the classic snow wear. But we were the first ones to do it our way. I mean, Flylow was the first brand to specifically make and market backcountry freeride product. And then the mountaineering companies all started marketing to backcountry skiing, just using their same mountaineering stuff before they finally started making freeride ski apparel. So we were lucky. We were the young people that this is what we needed, so we made it. and it put us at the front of things. And being young and being receptive to Kimbrough's idea, the Baker bib came about, and it has grown. And now the Baker bib comes insulated, it comes Gore-Tex, it comes as the classic Baker bib. We try not to make our product for women where you just shrink it and pink it is like the bad thing to do. So we actually didn't make a women's Baker bib. We made a women's Foxy bib, which is a huge success and is a 3-layer stretchy soft shell that's waterproof and fits really well and is what my wife wears every day. And then we see the Baker bib continue to work as a unisex piece where, like, go to the Alta Lift line and, like, there are so many young women that are now rocking Baker bibs, and we try to make it in small enough sizes, or you can get big and thug it out. But yeah, Baker bib is a phenom.
Why is it so popular?
Why is it so popular? I think that it's not just a Baker bib, but it's the secret sauce of Flylow from the beginning. There's a ton of value in our product. Besides the fact that we are part of the ski community, we represent the ski community. Our original mission statement was to make it to use it, and that we're making gear for the modern skier, which means that inherently our gear was supposed to evolve with the modern skier and has. And that's where we get lighter stuff for touring, and we get insulated stuff for our snowmobile brethren that like to snowmobile to go skiing. But the sweet spot that no one else really, can touch us is that we started making 3-layer 20K mountaineering quality garments, and we started making them in the $400 price range. If you look at our competitors, anybody that was making a $400 jacket was making it as a 2-layer hanging mesh lining jacket. That's a resort coat. It doesn't pack as small. It's not as tech. But you could slap a Gore-Tex logo on it, and you could try to compete with a Quantum jacket or a Baker bib, and it's just not comparing apples to apples. Anybody else that was trying to do it our way was all of a sudden in the $500 range, or was just making Gore 3-layer, and it was $600-$700. So along the way, Greg and I just always were bootstrapping it. Even today, we're a company of 20 people.
Damn, 20 people, dude. Well done.
We have sales reps. We have a whole rep independent force. We employ people around the world. But yeah, you compare other companies doing our dollar amount with how many employees they have. Our employees are pound for pound worth more output than other companies. And I think that that's because Greg and I were bartenders and service industry people, and we just always were bootstrapping, and it was our money. Actually, it wasn't our money. It was Chase Manhattan's money. So, like, back to economics, like Milton Friedman economics, whether people like conservative economics or not, if you are running a debt, you're actually going to spend your money in a more efficient way because because you are spending money that you don't actually have. And I think that's one of the tenets of Flylow and making us efficient. And what that allowed us to do is have a lot of value in our product. Initially, we didn't have to have the same price as our competitors. And then eventually, when our competitors started making ski apparel, as in mountaineering companies making ski apparel, they didn't make it our way. We were still making it mountaineering stuff that fit like a Carhartt, and they started making it like a ski brand with 2-layer fabric and a hanging mesh lining. And so I think that that's been a huge thing. The other aspect is that we just have always overbuilt. Putting those reinforced knees, having 2 layers of fabric is expensive, but it creates like a ball bearing situation where when you scuff your knees, like on a tree or on a rock, if you're a snowboarder that's moving around on your knees, back in the day when telemarkers were really prevalent, you were knocking your knees around a lot with knee pads, and again, you'd have taut fabric, and so by having 2 layers of fabric, it helped that stuff last. And so you take that and you apply it to the modern freeride skier, and yeah, you get a freeride fit, it's comfortable, you're moving around, you're warmer on a powder day or on a cold day, and it's just everything's played into the Baker bib and bibs, and it just becoming a stylish thing.
And it just sounds like you're ahead of the game, which I love. And I feel like you are ahead of the game also on some of the stances you've taken with fabric in recent years. So tell me a little bit about removing PFAS chemicals. And I think that some people call these forever chemicals. How did you validate wet out performance with alternatives like MPEL, and what is MPEL? And what failed on the way there?
Yeah. So a lot of times I would look to Patagonia as like the stewards of the environment. And so you have to compete with Patagonia to be good. And at the same time, with the PFAS situation, it was a scary thing because zero PFAS, zero fluorocarbon, DWRs initially were really not as effective. And you're dealing,
And DWR, tell us what that is really quick, just so we...
So a DWR is a durable water repellent. A durable water repellent is a coating that goes on, it's a bath. You take your fabric, which is made of multiple layers. So you have your face fabric, which is what you see. That's your color and texture, durability, wind and water resistant. But then you're going to laminate on your membrane. That's your Gore-Tex or your intuitive membrane, which we can rate. We can pull it as thin as we need to make it whatever rating we want. The higher the waterproof breathability rating, the more expensive it's going to be. And really, waterproof is easy. A Ziploc bag is waterproof. What you're paying for is breathability. Because if you put your hand in a Ziploc bag, it's going to condense within seconds. You're going to feel clammy in there. So you're paying for breathability. But then what can impede breathability is if your face fabric wets out, which happens to everybody at some point or another. So in order to limit the amount of time or increase the time that your face fabric will stay completely dry and also aid it in drying out when it does wet out, fabric mills and us in the outdoor industry start using durable water repellents, which is basically Teflon. So it's a non-stick coating that goes on your sneakers and your couches in the 50s and 60s, and eventually that goes into pans, Teflon pans, and it's a DuPont product. And what it's essentially doing is putting in a layer of crystals. And the crystals are now standing up on your jacket. And what they do is they create surface tension. So surface tension causes the water to bead up and then roll off and not get absorbed into the fabric. When those crystals get pushed down from a backpack strap, scuffing your jacket on a tree, rubbing your jacket on a car, eventually stuffing it in your bag. When those crystals break down, your jacket ceases to have surface tension on the surface and your durable water repellent needs to be revived. So that durable water repellent, you can revive it by throwing it in the dryer and that'll help bring the crystals back up. Or you wash it with Nick Wax DWR, which by the way has always been PFAS free.
That's great.
But never had a commercial application until about a year ago. So at a factory level, imagine rollers with your face fabric and then your membrane. And then if it's a 3-layer garment, a third layer, a tree coat that goes on the back that protects your membrane from the oils and dirt on your skin and you wearing that out. So imagine those 3 rollers coming together and making one fabric. That's your 3-layer shell fabric. But now it doesn't have a DWR. So then you're going to take that fabric, you're going to put it into a bath of Teflon, liquefied Teflon. And when it comes out, we're going to cure it. And we're going to let it dry. And then we're going to layer it, cut it, stitch it, bag it, ship it, sell it.
Wow.
And try to keep it on the market as long as possible by helping you revive your DWR. So we knew that the more fluorocarbons were in your durable water repellent and your Teflon, essentially, the better for repelling water, but the worse for the environment. Came out that PFAS may be leading to cancer and that all of a sudden we have microplastics in all of our bodies. So we start getting Nalgenes that are BPA free. And, so this was the next step. How do we get a zero fluorocarbon durable water repellent going? And the first step was to go from a C10, so 10 fluorocarbons in the chain, to a C8. That was like maybe the mid 2000s. And then we went to a C6 in about 2010. Shorter chain of fluorocarbons, broke down easier in the environment. And back to this idea. So this idea of the zero PFAS DWR has been around for a while. We were working towards it, but it wasn't until the great state of California mandated that there may not be any PFAS in the product sold in California, that then REI, who is the 800-pound gorilla in the outdoor industry, that they enforce they will not sell anything that has PFAS in it. So while we were all developing this technology and trying to test it and find different ways that we could use it, essentially it wasn't until those mandates that the fabric mills really snapped into gear and they started developing this other technology. And you have Impel DWR, Gore-Tex has their own proprietary DWR, and guess what? DuPont has their own zero PFAS DWRs because they're in the game of non-stick and fabric protection, and it makes total sense. And that's why, I won't go down my climate path.
No, do it, man. But, we do climate. I've had climate scientists on.
I just think it's similar to like an energy company, British Petroleum or Exxon, and all of them, when the United States pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords, and these CEOs said, we're energy companies. We're not just fossil fuel companies. We're energy companies, even though it says British Petroleum in the name. So in the end, the US pulls out, but these companies see that it's just energy. And so in the same respect, DuPont sees that, they can't use their old product. Now we're going to invest and we're going to come up with new ideas for this product. Now, I will give the great state of California shit because they only gave us 18 months to eradicate that from our production. And it takes us over 2 years to develop a new product and a new fabric and bring it to market. So after the pandemic boom and bust left us with excess surplus of inventory in 2023, we then had another surplus of inventory of PFAS-ridden gear in 2024, which really hurt the outdoor industry. And now we're in a trade war where the tariffs are now hurting the outdoor industry. So we're definitely, as a consumer goods sector of the economy, we're all on a little bit of shaky ground, but we're better for it, at least from a PFAS standpoint, because we now have better DWRs that are PFAS free. But here's the one other little kicker that people didn't realize was that there were PFAS in your waterproof membranes.
Oh, wow.
So
like Gore-Tex. ETPFE
is Teflon. And that's why Gore-Tex, in order to sell to our industry, because not all industries have to be PFAS free. Extreme survival outerwear, which I would argue Flylow gear is making. But if you're working on a fishing boat in extreme outdoor conditions, you don't necessarily have to get rid of your PFAS. But that being said, this is why Gore had to re-engineer their membrane to pull EPTFE, which the old Gore membrane was EPTFE with a polyurethane, layer. And then a lot of the stuff that we were using was just polyurethane. And then when we did air permeable waterproof breathables, it was just EPTFE. So that's why in the Flylow collection, there is no more perm membrane because it was EPTFE. We had to move that out. So we worked with our factory partners and mills to find a PU membrane that could get to a breathability rating that we were happy with for our touring collection in the Kane and the Smith. So that's the PhD fabric that's 30K. But then we match it with really lightweight face fabrics and moisture wicking backing, and we get that tour capability.
Well, it's great that you guys are doing that because we all know, I think we all remember fluorohydrocarbons from chlorofluorohydrocarbons, CFCs, that were hurting the ozone layer. And the ozone layer still exists. People don't think about it much, but it really focuses around Antarctica this time of year, actually. I've gotten lit up down there before, wearing a buff and everything.
Really?
So anyway, yeah. So we wear so much sunscreen and wearing a full buff covering everything and still just been torched. You don't have an ozone, almost zero ozone layer. I'll send you, NASA made a really great visualization of it. It actually formed early this year. So that was kind of scary. But I'm curious about, if you have a question on that, fire away, but I'm curious about tariffs. How have the new tariffs in the United States affected Flylow?
The new tariffs they basically added 20% cost to our production line for fall 2025, which is a huge hit. It's a swing between us being profitable and us being in the red for the first time. So, this is our 20-year anniversary. I've experienced a lot.
Congrats.
And thank you. And this is the first time that we're not profitable. And that's okay.
Wow.
We're going to, because it's a good learning experience. I should get through it, and we will. And the way you do that is by spending less in the future and working on adjusting pricing to account for the tariffs. But, I think emotionally, anxiety, it's caused a lot of stress through the entire company, in particular our production department, because you just don't know how to plan for something that was continuing to change. And I don't think anybody really thought that the great negotiator was going to negotiate tariffs, but not that he was just going to implement it or show, that's just the way it went. So we did not increase our prices because we had agreed to pricing structure
despite your cost being 20% higher.
Correct. Wow. There were some logistic issues. We had printed the prices on all of our product. So there's that, but also independent wholesale is the backbone of the ski industry, snowboard industry. It's the backbone of our business. And so when we established that we were going to maintain a price with them in last November, we stuck to it. And we will cut expenses. Someone leaves Flylow, if they leave and go somewhere else, we're not replacing people. So
you're talking about athletes.
Employees.
Oh, you're talking about employees. Sorry.
Yeah. That's what you have to do right now if you're a consumer brand that's affected by this, is you have to look to the future and figure out how you can cut expenses and raise prices. So essentially cut jobs and inflate.
That's tough. So I guess that's not an adjustment you can make until next year. So
that's I mean, it's tricky. We've been able to pivot, and for spring 2026 make those adjustments. But in 2025 you'll see that, and we're going to absorb as much of the tariff as we can, and then we'll have to pass some on to the consumer. But the reality is that businesses, especially businesses that are growth businesses like Flylow has been, that businesses run on bank loans and lines of credit to cash flow growth, or the cash flow cycle of your business, where we make all of our money in the fourth quarter and then you run out of money. And when you have an agreement with a bank, they're called covenants. And one of the covenants is you got to make money, dude. You don't have to make a ton of money, but a company should aspire to have profits in the 10 to 15% range, but it's acceptable in the 5% range. And that doesn't mean that money's coming out of the company. That money all goes into trying to reduce your debt in the future. A super mature company could do dividends to investors that have been involved for decades, or could add that to the bonus pool for your employees. Those are all things that you want to do. So Flylow's now in a different paradigm, but we're solid. We're not firing people, and we have some awesome new product that just came out that is going gangbusters. So, when you see Flylow test the market with our new Gore-Tex product for our 20-year anniversary, and you see that we're selling $600 jackets and bibs as well as we sell the $400 stuff, it's pretty impressive.
That's great. What are those products called?
So for the sake of SEO in this computer-generated world, we called it the Baker Gore-Tex 3-layer bib. And then there's the Lab Gore-Tex 3-layer jacket. So it's the lab coat. And then we did a Dante jacket, which is a 2-layer version of Gore-Tex with some body-mapped insulation on it. And on the women's side, totally different product than the men's, is the Domino and the Siren, where we use this awesome mechanical stretch fuzzy backed Gore-Tex fabric with a CCD backer that adds a little bit of warmth, but also is a little more wicking. So ground up, don't shrink it and pink it. That stuff is awesome. And then the women get a insulated 2-layer Gore-Tex jacket called the Freya.
Very cool.
Really exciting for us. And I think that partnership with Gore-Tex was a long time in the making. I coincidentally, back when I lived in Seattle in 2010 and 2011, I was riding Chair 6 at Alpental.
Yeah.
So I'm riding Alpental midweek on a powder day, and I sit down next to this guy, and he's wearing Climb Gore-Tex 3-layer snowmobile pants and an Arc'teryx jacket. And I'm like, that's interesting. And we get to talking, and it turns out that's Douglas Graham, who is the Pacific Northwest rep for Gore-Tex. So I developed my friendship with Gore-Tex and with Doug Graham almost 15 years ago, and we've been in communication on a chairlift midweek because we own our time, my friend. Right. We own our time. Mm-hmm. And over the years, it became obvious that they wanted the Baker bib in Gore-Tex. And then over the years, this developing the new EPE membrane came along, and so it made sense that when the new EPE membrane came out, it was going to be time for the first Flylow Gore-Tex Baker bib, and it's kind of like peanut butter and jelly coming together. It is one badass pair of pants.
Oh, that's great. And you were talking a little bit about finances and alluding to your cap table. Are you able to share any of that? It's okay if you can't. But who owns Flylow and who invests in it, or not who, but how does that look? What can you share?
Well, we're a privately held company, and evidently I talk too much when I drink espresso, so I can say anything. No. So Flylow is a privately held company. My two business partners, Greg Steen is my college buddy that started the company with me, and then we added this guy Scott Pearson, who's our CFO. Greg left the company in 2020 and has gone on to do some pretty cool stuff, but he's still the second largest shareholder after me. So the three of us collectively own majority share in the company. And then after the financial crisis hit and the credit crunch hit in like 2008, 2009, that's when my credit card boondoggle dried up, basically. That's what the credit crunch meant. So we needed money, and we did not show enough profit or have good enough books to get a bank loan, which eventually came. We got an SBA loan. But along the way, there were all these kick-ass angel investors that love skiing, and they actually really just love Cloudveil, but they couldn't buy into Cloudveil. And so now one of the guys from this group, he started wearing Flylow. He was telemarketing, and he said to me when I first met him, he was like, Dan, I was skiing the other day, and a 25-year-old woman came up to me and said, nice pants. I'll leave out his name. He said, Dan, I haven't had a 25-year-old woman talk to me in 30 years. He's like, so now I know that you're onto something. And so that group of angels, they own in the 20 to 30% range. And and that's how we roll. And then we have an option pool. So we have some employees that have equity or a vested equity in the company.
That's great.
And that's our structure at the moment.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because I just love supporting and hearing about entrepreneurs and people who are doing it independently, because you and I know it's not easy. You're going up against the legacy brands, and you're going up the big dogs and the publicly traded companies, and they have a lot more resources than you do. And so you've got to be, but I think it makes you better, right? Because you've got to be nimble, you've got to be sharp, you've got to be clever, you've got to find ways to cut corners that don't compromise. And so I love hearing about your cap table a little bit. So thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned a couple names of all these cool products, and in my head always just goes like, where do these names come from? Is it a friend? So I know there's stories around the Rogue vest, maybe that's how you say it, and the Phil A shirt. Could you share a favorite name story, or maybe one that didn't make it past the whiteboard?
One of the reasons why we don't need to have so many employees, or one of the beauties of not having so many coworkers and so forth, is that we can just make decisions. So Greg and I oftentimes were like, okay, we'd have an idea for a name, and then we just start looking at like the IMBD website and looking at characters from 80s TV shows.
That's great.
So we have the Magnum pant, and that was Magnum PI. And then Magnum had, the guy that flew the helicopter was TC. And so we had the TC vest, and we used to have the Higgins coat, so we covered that. And then we went down this whole A-team world.
I was just going to say, where's Murdoch?
We had the Murdoch. It was our first 2.5 layer jacket. Yeah,
thank God. It was my hero.
We weren't ready to be, now we are kind of an outdoor brand, or we're a ski apparel brand with a backcountry habit. Now we could sell 2.5 layer jackets like the Trailworks jacket. But at that point in time, we were a little ahead of ourselves. So we never went to production with the Murdoch.
That's too bad.
But we,
it's not over yet, though.
Not yet. But, so we just kind of come up with names. Like the Baker bib was from Paul Kimbrough skiing at Baker. And the chemical pant, I came up with that name because I realized that basically like all of these fabrics are just chemicals, plastics that are whipped up unless you're dealing with cotton or hemp and like natural fibers. And then from there we were like, oh, quantum goes well with that. Or actually it was the chemical in the lab coat. And then the lab went away. We made the quantums. But my favorite, some of the favorites would be like, let's see. Right now we're selling an amazing fleece robe called the Wolfie robe. That's spelled Wolfie.
Nice.
And Wolfie robe is upcycled fleece material that's left over from our fleece program. And it holds a 6-pack of drinks and has a little zip pocket for your credit card and your room key. It's critical on a ski trip. And don't say you don't have room to pack it, because the move is you pack your skis into it, tie them up, and set them in your ski bag. So it protects your skis. But Wolfie is what my friend Christian Wells used to call himself after a few drinks when we were growing up. His alter ego was Wolfie, and now he does cold plunges. So he and I were kicking the tires and came up with the idea for that. I have a new short coming out that's called the Zuki short. And that was the nickname of our guide in Georgia last year. Georgia,
you went to Georgia. Damn,
I went to Georgia with Nick Wagner. It was sick. Sweetgrass guides. So Zura was our local guide, but everybody called him Zuki. And I was like, that would be a good name.
That's so
and
fun.
Phil A is actually Phil Abrams. That's my dad.
No way. Oh, that's so fun.
Because we were making lifestyle stuff in the summertime. And so we made just like this classic Oxford shirt. And my dad, who's no longer with us, but when my dad was rolling, he only wore blue Oxford short sleeve shirts from Brooks Brothers. And he would have 5 of them in his closet. So when we made a blue Oxford shirt, we called it the Phil A shirt. And he was so proud, and he thought he got such a kick out of it. He bought the double XL, and he called me up. And he called me Harry, was his nickname for me. And he said, Harry, I got the double XL Phil A shirt. It fits like a medium. And evidently our modern sizing was not good for the old man, but he still appreciated the shirt.
Oh, that's so cool. Good story, man. Thank you for sharing that about your dad. That's very cool. Towards the end here, I got to know, where's your favorite place to test some of this stuff? So like storm day versus maybe a hot corn day.
I don't want to tell everybody, but
you can keep it vague. Keep it vague. Don't get in trouble.
I ski Alpine Meadows. I am an Alpine Meadows diehard. I married into an Alpine Meadows family. I thought when I moved here, there were 2 different ski hills, and I thought I'd be skiing at what's now called Palisades because it's so badass. And I love Palisades. It's a great backup mountain. What I say to jab you guys that love Pali Valley.
That'll get us going.
Yep. I go out, I'm looking for a workout, right? And I'm addicted to powder. I'm a powder hunter. And at Alpine Meadows, I can sidestep boot pack. I can get a workout. I can find better snow further after the storm. It's such a chill vibe. National forest, so it's an open boundary policy. Although I respect the patrol and their closed signs, but there's ways to get out of bounds. So every day I have a backcountry pack in the car, and a lot of times I'm using it. If I'm not going down the West Shore and going for a real tour, which is a few days a week, I'm at Alpine and I'm skiing with like that heavy inbounds, out of bounds cast system rig. And all my boots have tech fittings. I like the Dalbello HD Pros, now the Cabrio version. That's where I go. That's where I test gear. California is awesome because it can be wet and warm like the Pacific Northwest, but it can be cold like the Rockies. So I get it all here. And we're higher in elevation than the Pacific Northwest, so we're more consistent with our snowfall. We have lower AVI danger than the Rockies, and 4 inches of Sierra cement, as some people like to call it, skis bottomless. And I've skied 12 inches of blower powder in Aspen after boot packing up to the top of Highlands Bowl, and I swear it skied like dust on crust. So like,
oh yeah.
I know the East Coast is not coming here. It's too far. You guys should go to Big Sky, Colorado, and Utah. And I love that Tahoe is just the commuter resort for Reno and San Francisco and Sacramento. So we have our midweeks free all winter long. And it's just, Alpine Meadows.
Alpine Meadows is a great spot. There's no question. All right. Well, the last question is the most underrated piece of gear in the line, maybe this season, or maybe something that you just wear to death.
I will say the handlebar tech flannel.
Ooh.
So the handlebar tech flannel is a snap up flannel. Mm-hmm. It is made 100% polyester. It is brushed, like we brushed the shit out of it so that it feels so soft and it feels like cotton. But here's why I love the handlebar tech. First, I love snaps when I'm skiing, because when I start generating body heat because I'm boot packing, ski touring, whatever, I can just rip it open. Because it's polyester, it gives me good insulation without being too thick. I actually don't wear hoods underneath my hooded shell, and I also don't wear fleece, although we make some of the best fleece. Mm-hmm. I feel like this poly is like denser than the fleece, so with less weight. I was also a chubby kid, so like I don't like to feel chubby. So this polyester gives me good warmth while not being too thick. And then the other aspect of it is that from like a casual standpoint, to have a really nice plaid or solid flannel that you can throw in the wash and dryer and not think about, and when you pull it out, it is completely not wrinkled. That is huge for your day-to-day life. So yeah, when I go skiing, I start with a wool Flylow base layer and then a handlebar and a shell. And if it's cold enough, I'll put on a vest. If it's colder than that, I wear a Dexter jacket. I don't wear bibs. And something that I do on a stormy, nasty, cold day, I'll wear that Dexter jacket and I'll tuck it into my pants. I will tuck a micro puff jacket into my pants.
I would love to see that.
And then, well, as soon as I get to the lodge and I rip everything off, like I'll untuck it. But before I go out, that's what product tester and good friend Eben Mond and I like to do. So it's not something that everybody does, but I mean, everybody layers in their way. You wear hoods for everything. That's kind of the fun thing about Flylow and always designing this new stuff is, yeah, I have a passion for things. And actually it goes back to that group of friends from college, the 5 of us, that even still when I make stuff and I look at stuff, I look at it through the lens of what's New England boarding school kid Ethan gonna wear? Non-hooded fleece. What is tall, lanky guy Braden gonna wear? He wears button-ups and stuff like that. And then Seth is this geologist, so it's plaid, and he also always has a plumber's crack, so it's bibs. And then Greg and I were somewhere in the middle, and we pick and choose. And so if it's something that one of us would wear, it used to really be what was good for Flylow, but now, you know, we listen to the community, we listen to our athletes, we listen to the store buyers, the independent retail store buyers, and we take what works and we keep improving it, and what doesn't work, we scrap it and we come up with something new, because skiing's always evolving, snowboarding's always evolving.
And I'm with you, no bibs. But I see why people like them, but not for me. I'll cut them off and like sew belt loops in there if I have to. Well, that's all I got for you, Dan. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been absolutely fascinating. I learned so much. Do you have any thoughts here at the end of the show?
No, man, I'm a fan. We talk about the ski and snowboard community. You're a staple, man. So keep on doing what you're doing, guiding people in the woods and getting us all stoked to go out there and live a life on our own terms.
I really appreciate those kind words, man. And likewise, I loved seeing the independence and the way that you're doing this in this industry that's so competitive. Congratulations, man. Thank you so much for listening to the SnowBrains podcast. If you liked this podcast, please share with friends and family, and please be sure to subscribe. To find out more about SnowBrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and more. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast was edited by Liam Abbott, and I'm your host, Miles Clark.